And let's now go across to our correspondent Ramesh Ramachandran, who's been keeping a very close eye on these developments taking place. Ramesh, first of all, all eyes will be on the statement that U.S. President Donald Trump will make tomorrow morning U.S. time, and that's tonight for us here in India. But going by the language that he had put out in his tweet, beginning by saying all is well and so far so good, and also the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif saying that we do not seek escalation or war. How are you reading between the lines in these tweets made by these two leaders?
Right, so Nancy, let's walk our viewers through what's happened in the last 6 odd hours. Remember, 2 bases in Iraq were hit by Iranian missiles at about 4 a.m. India time this morning. So it's been more than 6 hours since then. And those 2 bases were one in Erbil in northern Iraq, in the Iraqi Kurdistan. The second at the Asad Air Base, which is the second largest U.S. military facility in Iraq. So that has a significant importance for the American troops. Now, the strikes happen at about 4 a.m. India time, and that's exact time when the U.S. Killed Qasem Soleimani on Friday morning. So the IRGC, the Iranian armed forces, saying that we chose the exact time of Soleimani's killing to take revenge for that attack. So symbolically, optically speaking, Nancy, the Iranians have planned it out. And this strike came barely hours after Soleimani's burial in his hometown of Karman in Iran. So a lot of symbolism and optics associated with this morning's retaliation. But that's, as you mentioned, Javad Zarif, the foreign minister of Iran, tweeting that he called it a proportionate measure in self-defense, while Trump tweeting that all is well and that he will make a statement later in the next several hours. But the fact remains that we are standing by to hear from the Iranian Supreme Leader, Nancy, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, will address Iranians from the city of Qom, which has religious significance for the Iranian people and culture. And it remains to be seen whether this is a one-off event or can we expect similar attacks in the days and weeks ahead. But Iran saying that we will hit any state that helps the U.S. aggression. So it could potentially mean other countries in the region, namely Israel, maybe the UAE. So there are reports circulating in the social media, at least, that these countries could also be a target of Iran in the hours or days ahead.
All right, Ramesh, my next question, have we reached a point of no return? Has the risk of region-wide conflagration involving Iran, Iraq and Israel increased more than ever?
Well, that's a million-dollar question, Nancy. Are we gone beyond a point of no return? Not yet. We're not quite there because Iran saying we will not escalate if the U.S. does not retaliate to our missile launches this morning. So all eyes now on Washington, D.C. as we speak. People are waiting to hear from Trump, what Trump has to say in his address to the nation later tonight, India time. So from Iranian perspective, they say we are ready for any eventuality and they will avenge Soleimani's death, at whatever price it might come at. But as I mentioned, it remains to be seen how how the U.S. responds to this latest provocation. And if that happens, then we can expect things to escalate very quickly in the days ahead.
Absolutely, all eyes will now be on the response from the U.S. But, talking about the regional circumstances, Ramesh, how have they changed, over the past 4 decades? Because this rivalry between Iran and the U.S. is 4 decades old. How have the geopolitics, and of course, how has it changed? The regional circumstances changed because oil is no longer considered a weapon. The Strait of Hormuz, Iran cannot block that even if it has the ability to do so. So how has the dynamics really changed over the years?
Well, historically speaking, Nancy, there have been no diplomatic ties between Iran and the U.S. since 1979, 1980, after the Iranian Revolution. So for last 4 decades, there have been absolutely no diplomatic ties or relations between the two countries. And that has led to an escalation of hostilities and tensions between the two countries, which has had a ripple effect across the region. Now, Iran could retaliate by potentially blocking the passage of oil ships across the Strait of Hormuz. That may further escalate tensions. Iran could also choose to hit out at American bases in the wider region, in Kuwait, in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia. So all eyes actually also on Iran, how it responds to the provocations in the days ahead. But speaking from India's perspective, Nancy, oil is a major factor for us for energy security. And any disturbance in that part of the world will have a cascading impact on India's economy, especially at a time when the economy is not doing so well. So India is monitoring these developments. And in the last few minutes, we've heard from the Indian Foreign Ministry, which has advised Indian nationals to cut all non-essential travel to Iraq in an advisory for Indian nationals there.
All right, and Ramesh, would it be right to say that Donald Trump, by this latest act of his, of ordering the killing of General Qasem Soleimani, has got himself deeper into the West Asia quagmire, and perhaps the need of the hour for him right now is to step back?
Now, that's an interesting question, Nancy. In irony in terms, Donald Trump won the 2016 election on the back of his political plank, or the poll plank, of ending the so-called endless wars in West Asia.
Correct, yes.
He criticized Obama for launching those wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. But today we find that Trump is putting US at risk of getting sucked back into the quagmire in West Asia. And some say it has a domestic compulsion dimension, because Trump is facing the impeachment heat in the US, and also elections are due in November. So between now and November, Trump can be expected to hard sell his Iran policy to his core constituents and burnish his credentials in the run-up to his re-election campaign.
So is there a need now for everyone, all the leaders, specifically from Iran and the US, to move to realism behind the rhetoric? And has Donald Trump miscalculated, is mistaken by thinking that, by launching these strikes and taking these provocative steps, he's trying to boost his re-election in November this year?
That is what many observers in the US and around the world are saying, that there is a domestic dimension of compulsion to all of this. The US has been at the receiving end of Iranian belligerence for many, many years, many decades, in fact, Nancy. And they saw Qasem Soleimani as the major stumbling block in expanding US's influence in West Asia. Why? Because Soleimani was one man as the head of the Quds Force. He had influence over operations extending as far as Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and also Yemen. So US allies in the region, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE, for instance, and Israel, viewed Iran as an existential threat. And there are deep divisions in the region, with Saudi Arabia on the one hand and Iran on the other hand, and between Israel and Iran as well. So these are very disturbing times for the region.
Absolutely.
And it remains to be seen how the US navigates these choppy waters in the days ahead.
Absolutely, yes, trying times really for everyone around the world, and we do hope that better sense prevails on the leaders there. Well, thanks very much, Ramesh Ramachandran, for joining us and putting all these developments into perspective for us. Thanks very much. And now let's give you a brief background of how the events have unfolded, and if we can have that, that chart up for you. We're talking about December last year, when first the US bases were attacked. The attacks had taken place on the US military bases in Iraq that had killed a US citizen. And then, of course, US had blamed Iranian-backed militia inside Iraq fires on its bases in retaliation. This is how the tensions once again had escalated between Iran and the US in December last year. And then again, the US embassy in Baghdad was attacked, and then we are seeing the attacks on the US military bases in Iraq. And after that, that big strike that had come in from the US in Baghdad, which had killed the Iranian top commander Qasem Soleimani. Iran had also summoned various diplomats from Germany, Switzerland and the US. Iraq's parliament also called for the US and other foreign troops to leave. Well, these are the developments that had taken place up to this day. In fact, also so much so, Iran announcing to roll back commitments under its 2015 nuclear deal. And in fact, what we are seeing, the latest development that took place this morning was the 2 air bases in Iraq housing US troops that were targeted, where missiles were launched by Iran. And in fact, Iranian state TV has reported that a Ukrainian airplane carrying 180 passengers and crew has crashed near airport in the Iranian capital Tehran. The cause of the crash is yet to be ascertained, and more details on that tragedy that had taken place is awaited. That crash that took place this morning, Ukrainian airplane carrying 180 passengers on board that crashed near Tehran. The cause of which is yet to be known, but the plane carrying 180 passengers and crew crashed near Tehran. Now, moving on now, the External Affairs Ministry has issued a travel advisory for Iraq. The ministry spokesperson in a tweet has said, in view of the prevailing situation in Iraq, Indian nationals are advised to avoid all the non-essential travel to Iraq until further notification. Indian nationals residing in Iraq are advised to be alert and may avoid travel within Iraq. He further tweeted, our embassy in Baghdad and the consulate in Erbil will continue to function normally to provide all the services to Indians residing in Iraq.